Hello guys and welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to be making a progressive trance pluck. We're going to be going back to making a lot of trance sounds, also deep house-ish and all these other genres, so we can kind of move a little bit away from the commercial end of EDM since all the sounds are starting to sound the same. Alright guys, so let's get started. So we are going to be using this melody that I'm going to play. Alright, so that's going to be the melody we're going to be using. So now we have Spire here. So straight away we're going to be leaving the first part of our Spire just by default the way it is, and you should have a saw wave. What we're going to do is we're going to apply 5 voices. We can apply 8 if we want, but the reason we're trying to keep the voices low is because a lot of people get the assumption that just if you're trying to make a supersaw, it needs 8 voices, 9 voices on every oscillator, and that's not the case. Keep in mind, the more you start adding, the more junk gets built up. A lot of times when you make supersaws, you get a lot of that high-end hissy sound, and I'm sure many of you guys have ran into this problem, or you've used some patches where you get that. And if you just keep busting out voices, 8 voices, 8 voices, 8 voices on our 4 oscillators, you're going to really dirty it up. So in progressive trance, a lot of the saws, like audience saws and Super Lane 8, let's just say that. Maybe that's not his name, but don't get me wrong. But a lot of the saws sound really clean and crisp, and the reason for that is because they don't really utilize 8 voices on all the oscillators, but they just tend to stick with like 5 or 4, and then they get like a really, really nice crisp and not that released type supersaw. So today we're going to be doing that. So here we have 5 voices, and we're going to detune, and we're going to turn the whiteness all the way up, because if we leave it down, the signal is going to be getting sent to the center of the stereo image. So if you're on headphones, you're going to hear it more towards, you know, inner than outer. So as soon as we turn the white up, you hear it more towards the outer end of your headphones, and that's what we want from this oscillator right now. So right now we have this. So our detunement we're going to set around 10 o'clock. We're not going to add that much. Again, we don't want to get that phasey type of sound as much. Our density we're going to lower it to 9 o'clock. So that's going to decide really like the let's just say like the hardship of the detunement, so how hard it is and how dense. Okay, so once we have this, we're going to activate oscillator 2 by increasing the volume to around 12 o'clock as well. We're going to leave it at a saw, but we're going to lower it down an octave. We're going to put 3 voices for this one. Since it's a lower octave, it's not going to be heard as much, and we're going to put the whiteness like around 12 o'clock. So we don't want it fully wide because oscillator 1 is already occupying the outer end, so we kind of want to give each oscillator a space in the stereo image, and that's one of the keys to creating really good sounding sounds. It's just not trying to, okay, let's put a shit ton of sauce and let's put them wide as fuck, and then just that'll be the sound. Here what we have is just down an octave, so this is the way you'll do it here, and we're going to detune that a tad bit less around 9 o'clock, and we're going to lower the detunement to around 9 o'clock as well. Alright, so there we have that. So now what we're going to be doing is we are going to put in oscillator 3, but we're not going to get the volume all the way. We're going to put it a tad bit up, and what we're going to do is put some white noise just to fill the space up, and we're going to use Control B to control the resonance. And the resonance, you can see this kind of little hill here, that's our resonance. So Control B is going to decide, you know, how big the mountain is, let's just say it that way, or how rough our resonance is. And you keep in mind that your resonance is that point before, you know, your filter removes that frequency. So when you have a high resonance, you'll hear that frequency get boosted after before it gets faded out. So what we're going to do is leave it at 12, and we're going to lower it a tad bit. So we're going to go around 9 o'clock, and we're going to not use Control A, I know. So I believe that should be it. Okay, so we'll just leave it as a low pass. Control A is going to control low, high pass, low, and so forth. So we're just going to leave it like that. We're going to turn the key off on it. And once we turn the key off on the white noise, what's going to happen is your Control A is going to control pretty much, you know, your low or high pass. So if you're all the way to the right, you have a high, and you can see it turns into a low pass as it goes. So we're going to control that. We're going to put it wide all the way, and this is the way I have it set up right now. Control A is a little bit before 3 o'clock, and Control B is at 9 o'clock. So once we have this, now we get to apply our filter. So in Spire, you get different types of filters. You got Combo, Perfecto, Acido, Infecto, and Scorpio. Scorpio gives you the access to a low pass or a high pass, just like Perfecto would, but the difference between them is just the characteristics of the Scorpio one, and I prefer using a Scorpio. I feel like they're just way more nicer and have a lot more character to them than the Perfecto ones. So right now, we're gonna remove this envelope off, this cutoff to the envelope off envelope 3 here, which by me it always ends up happening by default, so don't know why. So now we have this. Can't really hear anything, so we're gonna move it up a bit. So here we have our cutoff all the way up, and our resonance are on 10 o'clock. And remember, resonance is that point before the filter removes that frequency. So if I open up an auto filter, which I regularly do in all my tutorials just to show that, here we have the resonance you can see here. And pretty much when I put the quadrant up, which is going to be the resonance, it's going to get boosted up. So when I'm turning this knob here, this is pretty much what I'm doing, is I'm boosting that area before it gets filtered out, as you can see. So our resonance is set to 10 o'clock. And there we have that. Okay, now we're going to play around with the envelope 1, which is the amp envelope. And this is the last thing that's going to control the way the sound comes out of this. So we're going to add a little bit of release. And the release is going to decide how long the sound sticks around before it goes back to 0. So if I have a high release and I play a note, you can hear it sticking around. So you kind of want to find a balance between super release and not super. So around a little bit before 5, around 4 should be fine. We're going to increase our voices to 8. So as you can tell, now you can hear a little bit more harmony, and the reason for that is because your voices, and this is going to be the main voices, decides how many voices your synth is allowed to play, and by that I'm saying how many saws or how many waves can come out. So for every oscillator you see, oscillator 1 has 5 voices coming out. That's a total of 5 voices for every key press. So if I play 2 keys, so that's, let's say the first and the third, which is a chord, that's going to be a total of 10 voices already used up. So 8 voices is going to be allowed by every oscillator here. All right, so now we're going to add some reverb. Okay, so I'm going to put the dry and wet at around 10 o'clock. I increased a little bit of the decay. Decay is going to decide how long that reverb lasts. And then our color decides the frequency of the reverb. I'm leaving it like this by default. I am going to add a little bit of dampness though, so it's not super hizzy. Okay, and then I'm going to be using a play 2. We're going to add a little bit of delay though, so we're just going to put the dry and wet a tad bit up. Like where it's barely noticeable, but it's still going to give us the effect we are going for. Okay, so once we have those effects, pretty much we're done here. Now, the thing we're going to do is create this into a pluck. So right now I'm going to put the cutoff all the way down. You won't hear nothing coming out. And now I'm going to go into my envelope 3, which I took off. And I'm going to go filter, cutoff 1, which is going to be this cutoff here. And we're going to use the decay in order to decide how much of a pluck we have. So right now I lowered my resonance because resonance is going to play a big part in this, because right now my filter is down, but once the envelope kicks in, and then it kicks in as soon as you press a note, it's going to make the filter go straight up. So our resonance is going to really make it obvious when it's happening, and this is really hard to explain, but as you can see the effect. So we're gonna leave this down, and we're gonna and there we have it. So now we got that pluck. And now the way we're gonna do this, in order to make this come up, we're gonna automate it. So pretty much what we're gonna do is get this, we're gonna put it here, and then we're gonna put it here, and we're gonna automate this. So we're gonna have like a fucking 16 bars, and then what we're gonna do is automate it. So the way we do this is like this, and now we can automate the filter up. So let's do where the filter comes up here, and then we'll do hold Alt to do this kind of, you know, curve. And then we're gonna mess with the resonance. We want the resonance to come up, but we don't want it to come up so sudden. So just around there. And there we have it. So just a tad bit. And there we go. Awesome. Now we're going to apply some EQ and compression, which is going to be here, and this is going to be the last step in for our sound. So now what we're going to do is put some compression. So we have it. So my compression is set to 11 and my volume to 3. And what compression does, it controls peaks by reducing dynamics. So it kind of glues everything together. And that's pretty much the explanation everyone gives. But just remember, compression is not meant to make stuff loud. The only reason it got loud was because I increased the volume up to make up for the reduce in volume I was doing with my X comp. But I decided to boost it a little bit more than what was needed in order to get it to that commercial level. So now what I'm going to do is EQ it, and I'm going to lower volume to back to 12 just for this, because when you EQ stuff, you're pretty much what you're doing is you're making certain frequencies just go louder or lower. Alright, so pretty much what we have here is a low pass, a low shelf. And what the low shelf does is anything behind the frequency you set it at will get boosted by or reduced by whatever amount you set. And then your quadrant is going to decide the resonance for that. And then your high shelf is the opposite of that. So anything above the frequency you set gets boosted by whatever value or gets decreased by whatever value. And the quadrant decides how the resonance, that point that you chose in your frequency, if it's sharp or if it's smooth. Okay, so once we have that, pretty much we have this sound. Alright guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. As always, this preset won't be up for download in the SoundWorld page or anything, because it's meant for you guys to learn how to make. But hopefully you guys can get it. It's a very simple sound. There's not much advanced stuff to it. It's just proper programming and proper placement of your oscillators and knowing what you're doing in order to achieve it. So hopefully this kind of helps you guys a bit. So now I'm going to make that intro for you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.